And if I just to start off the agenda, and can I ask for any nominations for the position of chair? And bear in mind that the position, according to the Constitution, must be from a lay member. Do I have any nominations? Hello, Councillor Hooper.
I nominate the existing chair, Gareth, please.
Okay, can that be seconded? Or seconded for that? Is that you, Matthew? Okay, you're muted, Matthew. I'm not sure if you're coming through very clearly. No, you're still not coming through.
I'll second in the meantime.
Thank you, Nigel. Do you have any other nominations? Okay, thank you. And on that basis, Gareth Chapman is appointed to chair. And Gareth, is over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, members, for hopefully the confidence in me taking this forward for another year. So item 2 on the agenda is the appointment of a vice chair. You'll see there that the council's constitution chair states that the vice chair of the governance and audit committee is appointed by it and must not be a member of cabinet or an assistant to cabinet. Do we have any nominations for the vice chair? Councillor Good, John?
Nominate Nigel Ireland, please.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hooper? Thank you.
Second that.
Lovely, thank you very much. Do we have any other nominations? No, thank you. Nigel's appointed vice chair, so thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda is the apologies for absence.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda then is the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of April 2023. Members have got the minutes there and on the report. These are for correctness only, so is someone prepared to move, please, at their correct record? Councillor Good, John? Thank you. Nigel?
I have, excuse me, sorry, I have a question on correctness on under 944, if I can, please.
Yeah.
Which is page 973 of the numbered pages I've got. It says here that the chair commented that the internal audit charter mentioned elected members, but there should also be reference to lay members. It was agreed for that to be looked into as part of the review of the charter for next year. It was my recollection from that meeting that it was going to be reviewed in the 23-24 charter was going to be reviewed, which is the current one. I've looked back at the recording of the last meeting and it does seem a bit confused because it says the 23-24 charter, but then also references next year. And I thought as the change was to do with essentially updating the charter for accuracy due to a legal change, I thought that it could probably be changed this year. So I just wanted clarification on that point, and if it is going to be reviewed next year, why it can't be reviewed this year, if that's possible, please, Chair.
Yes, obviously, I think Andrew's there. These are the correctness of the minutes. I think the correctness is it does need to be approved or amended immediately on the basis that the legislation and we became appointed in 2022. So it seems, a complete nonsense for it to go into the 24-25 policy. So it should be updated in this current policy. I think that should be the correct position. Any other comments? No. Gareth, can you just amend that minute to say it needs to be amended for the 23-24 policy?
Yeah, I'll reflect that in these minutes, Chair, for this
Thank you very much. Any other comments? So I've had a proposer. Can I have a seconder, please, for the minutes, subject to those amendments? Can I have just a seconder for the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Thank you very much. The way I deal with this, anyone got any objections, vote against it, not in favour of that, please show. No, there are none. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 5 on the agenda is to deal with any declarations of interest. Again, no one showing, so there are none. If I can crave your indulgence, committee, we've got one of our acting head teachers joining us today, Mr. Mansfield from Stanwell. So welcome, Mr. Mansfield. So I'm asking whether we could take item 9 of the report first, rather than keep Mr. Mansfield waiting until about 3 hours' time when we get there. So if members are happy with that, then we'll proceed with item 9. Thank you. And over to Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Get the right paperwork up. So, thank you, Chair. This is the annual internal audit report for 22-23. This is one of the key documents that will be presented into Governance and Audit Committee this year, along with the plan, which will come later on in your agenda for 23-24. So, the purpose of the annual report is for me to give an overall opinion on the adequacy of the internal control environment, the risk management processes and the governance arrangements in place within the VAL during the financial year 22-23. It's also a requirement of the public sector internal audit standards that I need to report on an annual basis and cover key aspects of the work that we've undertaken, the opinions we've issued, and any concerns that we may have had during the course of our audit work. So it also sets out what we achieved during the year, and that can compare with the annual plan on a regular basis, and the information is fed into Governance and Audit Committee meetings during the course of the year. So, Chair, I don't intend to go through the reporting word by word, but if I could go through each heading and just give a brief summary, I would appreciate that. So in terms of the introduction, I've kind of covered that already. I'm referring to the actual report in Appendix A for members' information. So the intention is for the work we undertake during the year to accumulate and to enable me to formulate an annual overall opinion, as mentioned. So when we undertake individual audits, we identify the strengths and weaknesses of each of those, and we arrive at an opinion of assurance, which is set out at table 1, paragraph 2.2. So substantial, reasonable, limited, and no assurance. And there's a definition of what that means in terms of the information provided. Further on, then, the next table sets out the number of different opinions we've issued during the year. So number of substantial, reasonable, limited, and no assurance, with 41 opinions issued in total, with 32 positive and 9 unfavourable opinions, one of which is the no assurance opinion, and we'll come on to that later on in the agenda. In terms of the work we've undertaken during the year, we set out to achieve 83 audit assignments, not all of which were opinion related. 41 were opinion related, because we do cover other elements of work as well during the course of the year. And there's a table, there's information set out at table 3, identifying what we actually achieved in terms of the number of opinions, number of draft opinions, any work we undertook there was no audit opinion, and any audit work which will be carried forward into 23-24. There's also work not started in 23-24, which that will be carried. Sorry, there was work not started in 22-23, which will be carried forward in terms of the planning process into 23-24. So in terms of the opinions we've issued, we'll see the more favourable reports would come through for information. Where we have unfavourable opinions, the limited and no assurance reports, then we've included a brief summary of why we felt that the opinions were unfavourable in this particular instance. First one relates to Stanwell School, and we identified that there was no assurance that we could give in terms of the financial management of that particular school. And we've included further information about that, Chair, at Annex 5. So I'll come to that in a bit more detail as we progress. But in terms of the other limited opinions, there's a brief summary there as to why we felt they were limited assurance, and generally the weaknesses identified during the course of the audit outweigh the strengths, and higher risked or higher priority recommendations are included within the particular action plan. That will be a red priority. So there's a number there, Chair, and I'm sure members will go through those and ask any questions they feel appropriate at the appropriate time. In terms of recommendations, we identify high priority, medium or low priority. In terms of high priority, they're issues which need to be addressed as soon as possible. The low priority ones are generally for housekeeping, tidying up exercises. Table 4, the information on 4.2 shows the number of recommendations that we actually issued in all of the reports we issued during 22-23. And the trick here is to get them agreed, first and foremost, by the service manager, but also to get them implemented. That's really key. So all managers have agreed to implement the recommendations as set out in their reports, apart from one, I believe, which I can come to again when I go through the annex. This information is in the action plan of individual reports, and then when we finalise the report, the relevant director gets a copy of the final report, so they've got that full information. Kind of fraud work is something that the internal audit team gets involved with, and matters are quite often referred to the team, and we work with the council's fraud officer to make sure that the work is undertaken appropriately. And there's a list there in table 5 of an example of the work that we've got involved with in 22-23. The team also coordinates the National Fraud Initiative on behalf of the council, and again, working with the council's senior fraud investigator, we make sure that the data is available for submission into NFI, which is now run by the Cabinet Office. And then when the output is produced and the data matches are received from NFI, we work with the fraud officer to make sure that there are no actual frauds, or we progress any potential frauds to identify whether they are or not frauds. A separate annual corporate fraud report will be presented to Governance and Audit Committee during 23-24. In terms of the effectiveness of the team, then we've got a couple of performance measures. We've got a client satisfaction questionnaire. So when we issue a final report, we send out a client satisfaction questionnaire to all service managers. The response rate we've had is around 71%. It's not brilliant, but it gives us a good indication that people are feeding back to us in terms of good and bad, in different comments about how they received the internal audit service and what we could do to improve. So we'll take on board positive and negative comments, but reassuringly, the returns are telling us that 94% of our service managers are satisfied with the level of appropriateness of the audits that have been undertaken. And we've just included some comments there that have come back as part of that questionnaire process. Again, in terms of compliance with the standards, I need to make sure we're delivering a professional internal audit service. And in order to do that, we need to maintain our staff training. We do that through internal training, on-the-job training, and also CPD, professional training. Just to make members aware that during the year, we did appoint 2 graduate auditors within the team, and they've both started on their professional qualifications, again, a demonstration that we are continuing to deliver a professional service. We've got other members in the team who are also doing professional qualifications, and we've had a really good success rate so far. Actual benchmarking exercises we do with the Welsh Chief Auditors Group. Unfortunately, the data that's most recently available only relates to 2021. But in table 6, you can see that we've completed 79% of our agreed plan, which is an improvement on where we were in 21-22, and above the average for Welsh Chief Auditors Group in 2021. So that covers the whole 22 authorities across Wales. Talked about the client responses from our audits and questionnaires already, and 99% of all our recommendations are being accepted by service managers, which is a very good place to be. Bottom PI there relates to the time lag between us issuing a draft report and issuing a final report. And most of that is out of our control, in that we send a draft report out with an action plan, and we need to get the comments and agreement from the service managers back to the team before we can turn around the final report. So that's something we will be working on in the year with the service managers to try and improve that, to try and get the turnaround quicker, so we can get the final report issued and hopefully recommendations implemented sooner. Mentioned we need to comply with the public sector internal audit standards, and we also have to comply with their code of ethics and make sure we're delivering a quality service. We undertake a self-assessment against those standards on an annual basis, and that's usually reported into Governance and Audit Committee. And once every 5 years, we have to have an external assessment. That external assessment has been undertaken, and we're awaiting a draft report from the external assessors. So taking all of that information on board, that funnels me into being able to provide an opinion on the governance arrangements, the risk management processes, and the internal control environment, as I said. That's set out in Appendix A, and for each one of those, each section, I've deemed that there's a reasonable level of assurance that I can provide given the work we've undertaken during the year. Combining those three opinions, that enables me to give an overall opinion, and which is a reasonable assurance for the whole council in terms of the systems and processes based on the work that we've identified during the year. Annex A provides a detailed list of all the jobs we've undertaken, all the audits we've issued with a corresponding audit opinion, and the number of audit recommendations we've issued within those individual reports. Annex 2 is a bit more information. It sets out comparable information with the audit plan. So that, in essence, is the plan that was agreed by Governance and Audit Committee this time last year, and identifies where audits are complete with an opinion and the number of recommendations made, or will be carried forward into 23-24, or was in progress at the year end, a draft and final to be issued in early part of 23-24. You note there, Chair, that there are some reviews which are not opinion related, but that's part of what we do in terms of delivering an audit service. Annex 3 sets out the opinions which we have issued, the number of recommendations which we've made, the number not agreed, more importantly, the number implemented, and any outstanding. So where we agree an action plan, we generally have an implementation date, and the team are really on the ball with this, making sure that when the action implementation date is arrived at, they check to make sure that the agreed action has actually been implemented. Members will note that one recommendation was not agreed with. That happens from time to time, but 1 in 208 is not a bad figure to run with. In terms of Annex 4, then that sets out the client satisfaction questionnaire, just to give members a flavour of what questions we ask, and that's generally returned by service managers. Moving on to Annex 5, Chair, if I could. This relates to Stanwell School, which is the no assurance opinion which we issued during 22-23. This was a bit of an unusual one for us because it wasn't included in our original audit plan, but we were asked to go in and assess the financial control environment of the school, given that it was facing a significant deficit budget, cash flow issues around the end of calendar year 2022. So it's not the run-of-the-mill audit, so we concentrated just on the financial aspects of this school, identified strengths and weaknesses as a result of that work. In terms of the overall opinion, as I said, no assurance, so that generally means that the weaknesses outweigh the strengths, and the weaknesses we have identified are a high priority in terms of implementation of the recommendations, issues to be addressed. So the key issues that we identified were that the local authorities' financial and contract procedure rules were not being adhered to by the school, which is in breach of the fair funding scheme. No formal agreement was in place with the contractor in relation to a capital project. There was significant overspend on the capital project, not identified or reported prior to the audit review. Several grants were included in the budget 22-23 without confirmation that they would actually be received. No evidence was identified of active measures being undertaken as soon as the overspend was identified to mitigate any extent. And key decisions made by the school were not explicitly explained to or taken to governing body or recorded within the governing body minutes. That is an overview, Chair. We were concerned around the issues identified, but we've included the full report for members for information, so they've got a fuller view of and context of the work we've undertaken. We've taken legal advice and the report has been redacted in certain places, but I'm happy to take any questions on that in due course. But that concludes the presentation of the annual internal audit plan. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. Clearly very comprehensive. Committee, what I wish to do here is sort of deal with this in two parts. I think there's the overall report itself with the various annexes. But secondly, I think we need some time just to look at the Stanwell report, given that it's been given a no assurance rating. Now, I'm just saying that because clearly the school's only had sort of a month, really, need 2 months, but a month to have it, because you'll note that the final report was issued on the 9th of May. So clearly the school is working, I should imagine, hard with trying to resolve the issues that have been raised in the internal audit report. And I think, subject to committee agreeing, that we should give the school some ample time or adequate time now to deal with that. But I think we just need to note certainly clearly what appears to be going on in the school, and I think there needs to be some assurance given for that. So before we come on to Stanwell School, can I ask members if they've got any questions in regards to the rest of the report? Any questions in regards to that? Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick one. I think in Appendix A 6.2 regarding the return rate of satisfaction surveys, 71%, but I don't know of how many. Do you know how many were issued during the year?
Andrew or Joan?
Yes, Chair. We issued 41 opinions, so it would have been 41 finalised reports, 41 questionnaires issued. That's great. That's a I'd just like to say that's a really good result, because I know that obviously it's 71%, and I know you said you wanted to get that up, but if you issued one for every audit as well, that's really good. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Nigel. Councillor Hooper? You're on mute.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for pointing that out as well. Couple of questions. The first one, on the performance data, we look at the number of audits that are completed as against plan. But I'm interested in direction of travel. We've got about 80% substantial and reasonable opinions. How does that compare to last year and the year before? Is the control environment improving, getting worse? I appreciate that these are a snapshot of a point in time, but as a general rule of thumb, it'd be good to know that. The second point, if I may, Chair, is in your statement, you make reference to working from home. I'm interested that made the final statement, and I'd just like to test out. It seems as though you're saying working from home had no impact on the control environment. I just welcome a bit more thoughts on that, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Andrew?
Okay, thank you, Chair. In terms of the first one, I haven't got that information to hand. We prepare this on an annual basis. and we can provide that information in due course. This report would have been presented previously to Governance and Audit Committee and Audit Committee prior to that, so that information should be available, and we can provide that to members. Secondly, the control environment. Could you just point out exactly where that is, please, Councillor?
So it's in your statement. It says, so reasonable assurance, this is in your main statement. Many council staff are continuing to work remotely, and so you're making a reference to working from home being something that's worthy of being in this statement. And I just want to test as to whether or not you think that this has affected has it affected the control environment? Is it negatively, positively, or is it, because it must be there for a reason?
Okay, I'll try my best to answer that, and then Joan might have to help me out. So the work we undertake can be more complex if the service managers are working from home and not on site. So that kind of extends the time scale sometimes of completing an audit or getting information through in order just to undertake the audit. So we've needed to be flexible enough to do that, but it's just a heads up really that it hasn't been straightforward in terms of what we normally did, what we did pre-COVID. We would go out on site, request information will be forthcoming, it will be readily available. People were in the office, so we could wander down the corridor and we could just tap them up for information. There's a time lag sometimes when people are working from home to try and get that information and try and speak to the right person. So it's just a matter for that. In terms of the overall control environment, I think there's no impact because we look at the key controls that should be in place for every individual audit which we look at. We test against evidence and information that's available, either that we've pulled or we've requested from the auditee. We then come to a conclusion of whether that's a strength or a weakness and provide an overall opinion, as I mentioned earlier. But I don't think the overall control environment is impacted significantly negatively. It's just more about it's probably taken us a bit longer to get the work done, which could result in one or two audits not being done for the plan because we just haven't got the resources to do everything.
You satisfied with that, Councillor Hooper? Okay. Matthew?
Hello, can everybody now hear me?
Yes, you're okay.
Perfect. I'm going to risk sounding like a broken record here, Andrew, and I apologise because I know you probably came on board part the way through this year. But I was trying to reconcile the plan or the releases at Annex 4 or 5, I think it is, or 3 even. Let me correct myself, 2. Annex 2. So all the releases against the actual plan we approved last year. And of all the ones to be rolled forward at 23, 24, pretty much all of them, I think 14 or 15, are all high priority. So they were the ones we sat here 12 months ago saying they're the ones we need to tackle first. That doesn't feel like a wonderfully comfortable position from my perspective. So I just wanted to kind of test your thoughts and you know, that's great backward looking, but how you'd be hopefully looking to amend that for the coming year in terms of your approach.
You're on mute, Andrew.
Thanks, Matthew. Interesting one. From an Annex 3, how can you tell whether it's high priority or not? But I'll come on to that in a minute. But we haven't determined that on this particular annex, and we've identified what the recommendations are and whether they should be high, medium, or low. And but the actual audit itself hasn't been given a priority in this annex. But there will be some that come into your category, and I agree with that. We will endeavour to do as many high priority audits as we possibly can in terms of the plan. Sometimes it's making sure we've got the right resources available at the right time to do that. Sometimes things happen, which means we have to move things around. And that's in conjunction with service managers being available or directors taking us off into another direction for some reason or another. But what we will do moving forward this year is try and report that to you on a more timely basis. So we've identified what should be covered in the plan for 23-24. It's all high priority, really, but it's a subjective call from us, taking into account our cumulative audit knowledge, any concerns we have around that particular area, the budget, the risk aspect of it all, whether there's a new manager, whether there's a new system in place, whether we've identified any previous frauds, and all that information feeds into whether or not we include it in the plan for 23-24. So we start off with a very long list of what we could potentially audit. That's narrowed down to what we could feasibly audit within the year. And then and we have discussions with directorates and their management teams about where to focus the audit attention. And that information then is reprioritized in terms of the resources we have available. So it's not an exact science, it's not perfect world, but we do try and cover as many of the reviews as we possibly can. And where we've identified a high priority, we will try and do that as soon as we can in terms of coverage in the year. But sometimes there's reasons why we can't do that. So what I will do this year is just give you as a committee heads up when we're likely to be in that position where we're not going to cover higher priority jobs earlier on in the year.
Thank you, Andrew. Do you mind if I come back on that, Chair?
Yeah, carry on.
Thanks. I've been looking forward to seeing the information going forward. I will correct myself because I'm looking at Annex 2, which is your list of everything that's been released. Now, I know in this version, you didn't provide your prioritization of what was at the start of the year was high, medium, low. So I went back to 12 months ago and compared it to the plan we signed off. Okay. And that's where I've got a list of 14 audits that were high priority that you said there are top priority, sorry, your predecessor said they were top priority to be completed during the year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to reel off the list, I can give it to you. But that it doesn't really make sense to me, I guess, that there's such a high percentage or significant percentage of high priority reviews that have not even been started. And I'll save my comments on the future plan until the right time. But it's that, you know, when we're focusing on the medium or the standing or that kind of thing, that if we're talking about a risk-based approach and a public sector internal audit standards, and as an internal audit function, you said these are the highest of priority, and we've classified those, and we're not doing them, it raises a question to me.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a very valid point. And I look into the reasons why we were in that position this year. I don't know what the plan said in its entirety last year because I wasn't around, but I will look into that for you, Matthew, and identify why those particular jobs weren't done. In local government, it is risk assessed, but it's also coverage as well. You know, we're accountable to the senior management team, chief exec and directors, and sometimes they need coverage in a particular area. So it's a combination of a risk assessment of the plan and making sure we've got coverage in the appropriate area. You could argue that schools are low priority, but not particularly in this authority, but in other authorities, that's where a lot of the fraud happens. So you need to make sure there's adequate coverage in those areas across the board, across all service areas. And we've got 800 plus services we can deliver on. So we need to make sure we've got appropriate coverage as well as the risk assessment.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Any other questions, anyone? Councillor Goodjob.
Yeah, just a quick one on 3.0 11, you're stating that follow-up audits will be made on all limited and no assurance opinions. Will that be included in next year's plan as well? And also, can we be sure that these are going to be taken up, considering the lack of resources that audit has had previously, and that you haven't been able to complete all, as Matthew has said, you weren't able to complete all high priority audits of last year?
The simple answer is yes. They will be included in the 23-24 plan as a priority, because if they would be given an unfavourable opinion in 22-23, then we are duty bound to follow them up to make sure that the agreed recommendations have actually been implemented. We can ask the service manager that it's better, I get more comfort, and therefore I can give you more assurance that when we do a follow-up audit, then we can test specifically to make sure that those implementations or those recommendations have been implemented. So we will endeavour to do a follow-up review of all of those reports within 6 months and report back to Governance and Audit Committee accordingly.
Thank you, Andrew. Is that satisfy Councillor?
Yes.
Good job. Yeah, thank you very much. Any other questions, anyone on this part of the agenda? Andrew, I've only got one on Appendix 3, which was the not agreed recommendation by, is it Dinas Powys Primary School? Are you satisfied now that that's is a recommendation that can be just dealt with, or does it need to be escalated?
In terms of the detail of that, Chair, unless Joan knows, I'll have to come back to you. But generally, 1 out of 208 is not a bad figure to be. But in terms of non-agreement, and that happens from time to time, our service managers disagree with our recommendations for whatever reason, we would have a discussion with them and reason with them as to why we felt that recommendation was required. Sometimes we might amend the recommendation or update it to make sure it's more realistic in terms of the expectations. If we agree to disagree, then we would escalate that process through to more senior managers. The final reports go to the service manager we've directly audited, but also to their head of service and to their director. So they're fully aware then of the action plan that's been agreed or not agreed, and then we can take it up with them in terms of an escalation process if we feel that's the need. I think in this particular circumstance, the one recommendation that was not agreed was a low one, but I'm sure Joan will come in and correct me, and she'll be able to provide a bit more detail.
Okay, thanks. Joan?
Yes, thank you. If I can just sort of reiterate what Andrew said. Yes, it was a low priority recommendation that wasn't agreed. It was around the unofficial fund expenditure and the type of expenditure that they want to allow going through that fund. We always say that that unofficial fund is still for the benefit of the children, and therefore things such as flowers and things shouldn't be, we don't see it as appropriate spend for the children. The head teacher in this circumstance disagreed with us, and they felt that they wanted to continue until they had advice centrally from education or the Learning and Skills Directorate. So we agreed to differ on that one, but we have escalated that to Learning and Skills Directorate, who are looking at providing some policy around the unofficial fund.
Lovely, thank you for that. Councillor Goodjohn.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on that because it was also mentioned as part of the audit on Romilly, and also, and I'm sorry to bring it up now, Stanwell as well. The idea to me that this is a low priority and a medium one for Stanwell is quite strange. I mean, I'm just going to use Stanwell as an example. I'm trying not to bring it to this item yet, but just using it as an example because it's the only report I have here. £3,300 being used outside of the scope of unofficial funds, and also over £350,000 being held in unofficial funds is extremely strange to me. Is this becoming regular practice within schools? Is this commonplace? What other you've mentioned that we're going to have more policy regarding that. What are the current policies around that, because the recommendation that you've given to Stanwell is to make sure that all fund expenditure is appropriate and within scope. Well, how are you planning to do that if you don't have the culture and you don't have the government's arrangements in place to be able to ensure that those accounts are being properly, not only properly audited, but also properly checked with the finance committee and being properly checked within the school? So just as a general point regarding schools, now there's been mentioned in 3 different audit reports, what is the current position regarding unofficial bank accounts? And also, what are we doing to try and ensure that schools are keeping pace with council policies on this matter?
I think, Councillor Goodjohn, I think you make some very pertinent points there, something I was going to pick up when we deal with the next item. And again, it's not an issue I want to use Stanwell as an example about. But I think clearly, as the matter's been referred to the Learning Directorate through education, I think it may need to come back to us when we deal with Stanwell as a look at the overall policy, because I agree with you in some of these issues. You know, it's public money to start with, whether we think so or not. People have given their public money or it's come through other sources. And therefore, there needs to be some strong governance over the use of that public money. And I agree with you. If there's no policy, then people will do with it what they will. So I think it's essential, I think, so that the school's got clarity as well as the local authorities got clarity as to how they use this money. And I think possibly that could be picked up as part of the. I don't mean to highlight Stanwell, sorry, but I think it could be used as a sort of a pilot case to say, look, you know, this has been identified now in 3 or 4 schools, and this is what we're going to do. This is a policy we're going to do. Because again, our remit as a governance and audit committee is to ensure the right governance is there and the right assurance is there for use of this funding. So I'm fully on board with you, and maybe it's something we pick up with the Director of Education in due course when Samuel obviously is going to come back to us in due course. Okay, any other comments? Sorry, any further questions? Sorry, any comments on that part of the report from members? Now, I've just got a quick comment, Joan. You'll know what it's all about, which is on Appendix 3, which is the future target dates for dealing with the recommendations. Obviously, there's quite 97 future target dates on the annex. What dates are those in regards to those reports? So, you know, are they off into the future, or, you know, certain audit reports will need to be dealt with by a very specific date? And I think it's making sure we've got that date going forward in an extra column, Joan. You've heard me say it before, so so if that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. If there are no other comments on the report, if we now look at the Stanwell matter, which obviously is picked up in Andrew's report as a no assurance matter, and clearly it is of, for me, and I'll just make these comments, it was of serious concern for me when I read the report, because as Andrew said, and no assurances that immediate action is required to address fundamental gaps, weaknesses or non-compliance identified. The system of governance, risk management and control is inadequate to effectively manage the risks to the achievement of the objectives of the area audited. So clearly, there are some serious concerns there, and as I said, I thank Mr. Mansfield for coming along. He's not going to be asked any questions or be put in any positions here. The report was issued, as we said, on the 9th of May. Clearly, it's been discussed with the school, and there's some key dates in there. But I'm just wondering, before, rather than get right into the depth of this, the school's going to have adequate time now to deal with it and to digest what needs to be done, and obviously work with our education department to address lots of these issues. And I understand there's a lot of goodwill and support being given there. But I believe, that we need to keep a weathered eye on this, given the issues that have been raised within the report itself. So on that backdrop, I don't know whether any members have got any questions, or do the members wish to wait until we get a further update report from Andrew and his team in order to move this matter forward? Councillor Prothero.
If I could, please, Chair,
Yeah.
just focus on the procurement non-assurance, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I just want to ask Andrew, I mean, it is, to me, it's quite alarming that the school has given, first of all, their reason for the way that they handled the procurement exercise, as they didn't think that they fell under the local authority financial and contract regulations. And if that being the case, they seem to have actually followed no procurement rules, because as a public body, there are public contract regulations that apply to all of us. So what I'm asking Andrew, please, because all of the things that they highlighted, which were absent in terms of the due diligence, the advertising, the transparency, all of the things that would have to be covered, that makes me worry that this isn't happening on a regular basis. So what I'm asking Andrew, please, when you review this again, because I know with no assurance you're going to, can you look more in detail about and at their procurement strategies, what their rules are, and that they actually do comply with public contract regulations? Because this is and it's such a risk. It's a risk to the authority, it's a risk to the school. And it's really important, I think, that the lack of possible specialism, that's what's missing here, and that there isn't that understanding of what actually they should be doing and should be covering. Thank you.
Councillor Prothero, would you mind, before Andrew comes in, I looked at this at great length over the weekend, and I've drafted a set of recommendations for committee to consider. I, like you, are very concerned about the procurement of this project, and I know Andrew is on sort of a light touch at the moment. But I do have a recommendation which I will be asking committee to agree to do a much deeper dive into it on the basis you've said. From the inception of the project to the very end. Well, I don't even know whether we're at the very end yet, because I don't know whether we're in the defects liability period or anything like that. But would you mind just waiting for the recommendation, because I think it may preempt what Andrew's going to be requested to do. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you, Councillor Prothero.
Thank you.
Councillor Norman.
Just a quick one, thank you, Chair. When was this school last audited in this manner, and how long has this discrepancies, how long have they been going on? Do we have a time scale for this? Because it seems, no, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. Something has been going on for a while, or why wasn't it picked up previously?
Andrew, do you just because obviously you were asked to go, weren't you? So
yeah, that's a fair point, Chair. I specifically on my back.
Yeah, you're okay.
Back. Okay. I don't know the answer to that. We've got the information within our audit management information, and we can provide that. We can get back to you unless Joe knows it to hand. But I mean, it's something that we would possibly picked up a couple of years ago, part of our planning process. But we can provide more detailed information to members, to all members outside of this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, just to clarify something in terms of the report where it is at the moment, and just for members' information, I guess, as you picked up, as some of the members have picked up, it is an unfavourable audit opinion, and we will go and follow that up in due course. But obviously, we're mid-June now. Schools coming to close to the summer period, so we will go back and do a full audit in terms of covering all the things we would look at in a normal school audit in due course, and that will be sooner rather than later, subject to your recommendations, obviously.
Yeah.
And that will cover other things than we looked at this time round. This time it was quite specific.
Yeah.
And we were asked to look at the financial control assessment in particular. So this audit was very focused, but the next one, as I say, subject to your recommendations, will be broader, but we will cover more of the same issues just to make sure that what members have picked up is not a regular occurrence, or we will report whether it is or isn't.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Chair.
you for that, Andrew. Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just wondering, I imagine that the school receiving this will have been very disappointed to have this report come through. Obviously, no one wants to have a report like this with this many recommendations. And I just wondered what the response was like, and I don't know who would perhaps want to answer this, but what the response was like in terms of accepting the recommendations. A lot of them seem to have been accepted to say, yes, we'll do that. A lot of them by 1st of April 23, which is really pleasing to see. So I can see a lot of them been taken on board. There was just a couple of bits of wording which just worried me a little bit. So 1.3 in the management action plan, it says realistic budgets must be set at the start of each year. And the management comment is realistic budgets will continue to be set as they have been in previous years, which when I read it cold seemed a little defensive. And I think 4.1 regarding decisions made by the governing body as well. Now, I can totally understand how responding to a report like that can be difficult to do, but I suppose it's just from your opinion, Andrew, in terms of the response to that. Did you get the feel that they'd gone, okay, yeah, something's gone wrong here, we need to do something about it? Is that the type of response you got from the school?
You're muted, Andrew.
Sorry, Chair. Trying to juggle a couple of screens here. Apologies. General impression was that they were positive about moving forward. This was a timing review for me, so Joan might have more details, a better response than I've got. I've picked up the review in terms of its final stages. The work was underway when I came on board. So Joan and the team went out and they discussed the action plan with the senior managers of the school. Joan might be better placed to respond to that particular question.
Joan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I went along with the two auditors to discuss the recommendations. Mr. Mansfield was present as well as another member of his staff, and we discussed them and went through the comments to try and explain that we were looking forward and we wanted their assurance how they would put things in place looking forward. So I agree some of the wording, as you picked up, was defensive, but that's human nature. But all in all our recommendations were accepted, and the school understood where we were coming from, why we made them, and as I said, accepted them all.
Thank you, Joan.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Councillor Good-John?
Well, very quickly, can I just reiterate the point that Nigel has just made there? Because I was going to make the exact same point, is that how can you be 100% sure that a recommendation has been taken seriously if the point hasn't been taken on board, because the comments regarding the recommendation was basically to deny the recommendation. The recommendation is you need to make realistic budgets, which implies that you haven't been making them before, because otherwise it wouldn't have to be a recommendation. And then it stated that realistic budgets have been set in the past. So I think there just needs to be extra work on focusing on these points that haven't been 100% taken on board by the management on points like this. I also wanted to highlight 4.2 as well, which regards the costing of the capital project, the wellbeing building, of £784,000. I just wanted to ask, I'm not a school governor myself, so I wanted to ask about the structure. So the finance committees on any boards, any companies, any charities that I've been involved with in the past has always had oversight over large capital projects like this and signed off these projects. So what I know the minutes have been unclear, but can I ask what you're aware of what kind of oversight the Finance Committee had over the project from the audit you've conducted so far.
Councillor Goodjohn, do you mind me again interrupting? As I said, it may be worth, I know they've got lots of people showing hands a moment, to show you the recommendations. I don't know whether I should do it now, because that may actually deal with a lot of your questions, because as I said, and I've indicated, one of the recommendations is asking Andrew to investigate the contract from start to finish. And obviously it'll also look at the governance of that contract, which is picking up the very points you've just raised. So, you know, what were people told? How was it managed, etc., etc. So could you just bear with me for 2 minutes? And if you're not happy with the recommendation, then I'm happy to be guided by committee. Thank you. Councillor Drake?
Yes. Oh, sorry, I better put my camera on. Right. It was regarding the governing body itself, you know, on page 13 under governance, it gets substantial assurance, but then you get further down and I'm very concerned, particularly on page 22, when it says, hang on a minute, lost it. Although the Finance Committee and governing body were provided with information on proactive measures taken, these haven't been explicitly included within the meeting's minutes, which I don't think that's very wise somehow. And I was just wondering, did they get the full information? Because we got no record of that, have we?
Can I again crave your indulgence that there's going to be some recommendations to try and deal with this? I know Mr. Mansfield's on there and he's going to pick up unfortunately, he's picking up the cudgels here, but it's to assist everyone, the recommendations that I'm going to bring before committee for some approval, because I think everyone needs to be on the same page, singing from the same hymn sheet with the same information, because as you quite rightly said, Councillor Drake, if people only know half a story, then they're only going to, they're going to give views on that half a story. So could you just bear with me?
Yes, I will. Yes, as a governor myself, you know, I was quite concerned about that.
That's very kind of you. Thank you, Councillor Drake. Councillor Wood.
Hi, good evening. My question around this is obviously, you know, there's a school engaging on quite a large capital project here, and it's ended up in a bit of a mess. And do we have any intention to make sure that these rules are made clear to every other facility that will be possibly embarking on capital projects in the future, to avoid, I think, you know, obviously if it can happen in one place, it can happen in 2 and 3 and 4. And if we're assuming that there was no, we come from the point of view at the beginning that there's no malfeasance.
Yeah.
So if everybody was acting in good faith, I think it's probably worthwhile that the limits and the recommendations for controlling this type of thing are made very clear to all the other organisations that may be embarking on similar things.
I don't know whether Andrew's got the answer to that, but my answer would be, obviously, this is a foundation school, and I think mentioned in the report itself was that there was a view that the procedures and policies don't apply. Now that's quite rightly wrong, and I think in regards to the other question you posed, most of the other schools and that maintains with schools within the authority, so the authority would take on all the bill programme, etc., etc. Right. That's my understanding. Right. So hopefully it would never happen. Otherwise, the council would be in difficulty itself. So I think, you know, clearly another reason for some of these reports is lessons to be learned as well. So if there's any lessons to be learned across the authority, then my understanding would be, and I would wish that, you know, recommendations go to the relevant cabinet to say, look, you may need to learn these lessons because this is a learning exercise for us all.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There are no other questions. I don't know, Gareth, Davis, whether you could put the recommendations up. I know members haven't seen them, and I don't know whether you could share what they are.
Yeah, I'll do it now, Chair. Yep.
Thank you. And I'll take you through it, and I'll give you my view in regards to why they're being put in place, and Mr. Mansfield obviously then can understand it. And then obviously if members accept it, hopefully it gives us a much fuller picture forward. So recommendation 1, as you see there, is that the local authority should consider issuing a warning notice to the school under the School Standards and Organisation Wales Act 2013. Clearly, the school is working extremely well with the local authority at the moment. That power gives the local authority a power to intervene in the school and set out some very strict parameters under which it's got to be dealt with. So I put that in there for the Director of Education and the senior management team of the authority to consider. If obviously the wheel starts to come off, then they may wish to serve a notice under the appropriate legislation there, and there are adequate criteria, in my view, by which it could be served. The second one is, I think it picks up Councillor Drake's question. I think the internal audit report, which we've got before us, should be formally shared by the council with all the governors on the governing body, and that the Director of Learning and Skills and the Head of Internal Audit should meet urgently with all the governors and the senior management team of the school in separate meetings. So there's a meeting with the governors and the complete board of governors, and then there's a meeting with the senior management team to present the internal audit report. And the reason for that is what Councillor Drake said. Everyone will have the same information before it. So it's not hearing things second hand, third hand. It gets the whole information before it. So people are fully aware of what the situation is in regards to school. And it may well be as a result of those meetings, the local authority or the school wishes to do a communication to the pupils or the community just to set out in an open and transparent manner what is happening within the school, because I'm sure within the area there's tittle tattle running around everywhere, and obviously the right story needs to be out there with the parents and everyone else. We've got the next one. The committee receives an update on the progress made against the action plan at our meeting on the 18th of September. So this one's requesting basically that the head teacher and the representatives from the governing body of the school come along to our committee meeting in September. That will be after the summer break. It gives hopefully Mr. Mansfield some time to work with the governors and the local authority and update members as to where we're at. So hopefully good progress will be made and some reassurance can be given to this matter moving forward. That won't be the end of it, clearly, but we can get initial updates there rather than bringing them in too soon. We've got number 4, the internal audit service work with Stanwell School to incorporate management responses to any recommendations that do not currently have responses. So offering the services of the internal audit team to support the school in coming forward. We've got the one that the internal audit of the control environment at school that is planned for autumn be prioritised. And again, that's picking up, I think, Councillor Goodjohn's point that we need to get this back before us as soon as possible. Picking then Councillor Prothero's point up, that all arrangements around the delivering the contract for the new wellbeing building be further reviewed to highlight any specific procedural weaknesses and identify any appropriate follow-up actions. And what I've suggested there is that the interim findings of the report or the review be brought to our next meeting on the 17th of July. Now, I know that's only about 4 weeks away, but given the seriousness of this issue regarding the contractual relationship, whether there is one or not, and what processes and procedures were followed, that again gives me serious concern. And I think we need that matter dealt with as soon as possible, certainly on an interim basis, to give us the reassurance that things are being put in place, or they are in place, and it needs to be addressed. And the final one is that the internal audit report in respect to Stanwell School contained at Annex 5 of the agenda, which we've got tonight, item 9, and the recommendations we make be drawn to the Cabinet's attention, obviously, and then any subsequent report that we receive and any recommendations we make, again, be referred to Cabinet as and when they arise. Because again, the executive, in my opinion, needs to be advised quite clearly on this matter, given it's a school which has received a no assurance recommendation. and I'm sure that the Cabinet would want to be fully aware of this position, not only because of the current budget situation they find themselves in, but also because of all the policies and procedures that haven't been followed. And obviously there's a big learning exercise to be undertaken here, but I know that the Education Department and the authority under the, obviously under Rob Thomas, the Chief Exec, are trying to provide as much support as possible to resolve this issue within Stanwell School. So those are the recommendations I drafted over the weekend for members to consider. So I'll go back to you as members. Hopefully they will address most of the points, hopefully all the points that you've raised earlier, so that we move forward. Councillor Prothero.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to actually thank you twice for your attention to detail and for the recommendations that you've taken time to prepare for us. Really grateful. I just want to go back to what I was saying about the procurement and the lack of the procurement exercise. I know that they've got issues now with the delivery of the contract. That in itself is a separate matter to me. Obviously, there were no terms and conditions in the first place, so they will keep hitting us with compensation event after compensation event, and there's nothing that you can rely on in terms of remedies because there wasn't a contract. It's the actual about the procurement itself, and that there was lack of due diligence, of advertising, of anything really. And that's the bit I wanted you also to pick up in your recommendations, because that's something that I think audit need to focus on as well. Yeah. Because this isn't a one-off, clearly, and there needs to be quite a bit of work, I think. And I'm sure Stanwell aren't on their own. Procurement isn't just about buying things. It is a specialised type of practice, and if people think because they're a buyer they understand all the rules and regulations, well, we can end up in these sort of situations. So if there could be something else in there about that part of it too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, Councillor Prothero, and thanks for your thanks. But yeah, if we could, obviously Andrew's got it, because Andrew and his team will now take that forward. If it can be just tweaked a little, just as, to deal with that. As I said, we need to do it from start to when it finishes, and the points you raise are very valid. So thank you for that. Thank you for that contribution. Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to reiterate what Councillor Prothero said, the work you put into this. I'm just wondering how this all reflects on the morale of the staff, because surely it must be very depressing for them to come up against this when they've thought they've been doing an excellent job, and under the stresses, we all know how bad it is in teaching these days, and to have this thrown at them again, it must be very demoralising. And I'm wondering if any support has been put in for the staff, for their mental health, etc.
Yeah, obviously that's that's nothing we can directly look at, but I'm sure that the Director of Education, who's observing this meeting tonight, will put in the necessary support that she can put in, and I would hope that certainly Mr. Mansfield and his team there will also support his team at the school, because again, what you just need to be very mindful of, if there is a substantial overspend, then that can have an impact. Now, whatever that translates into, whether it's redundancies or short time or whatever, there will be an impact on the staff within the school. And I think that's a very pertinent point you've raised there. But I will ask, obviously, that the Director of Education, working with the head teacher, if we can try and put that support in, which I'm sure they would with any school, which is going through the same circumstances, are essential, because obviously the teaching staff, the assistants, anyone in the school are very important to delivering the education of our young people.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Goodjohn.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Gareth, for those recommendations. I believe all of those I would agree with. I'm happy to second, but I would also ask for additional recommendation regarding the current position of unofficial funds throughout the council.
Right.
and I would love if we could just get some advice as to the current position of it, and what policy work is being done to try and regulate unofficial funds, and what the current policies are, and if we have any, simply.
Yeah, I hope that Gareth from Democratic Services could draft a recommendation in regards to a general one in regards to looking at the reviewing the policy in regards to unofficial funds in schools and taking that forward, not only in regards to Stanwell but also across the authority. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify one thing with members, in terms of unofficial funds, what we refer to as school funds, so it could be school private funds. So the terminology sounds a bit not compliant to have an unofficial fund, but it's not the official fund of the budget of the school. So therefore, it's generally the school private fund, referred to in the Vale as unofficial funds.
Okay, thank you for that. If there are no other comments, I just got to ask you to look at the recommendations. The first recommendation obviously is in regards to the overall report, and the recommendation says to note the head of internal audit's annual opinion. I think in the Constitution, in our terms of reference, we have to approve it. So I think subject to what members would agree, that I think the recommendation is that we approve the head of internal audit's annual opinion on the overall control environment at the council as number one recommendation. And then number two, in respect to Stanwell School and the internal audit report at Appendix 5, we set out those 7 recommendations. If we can just tweak the one in regards to the contractual matter for Councillor Prothero, which obviously hopefully would have been picked up, but it just needs to be more specific. And an additional one, number 8, in regards to Councillor Goodjohn's point in regards to the policy, looking at the policy in regards to unofficial funds, not only for Stanwell, but across the authority. So hopefully everyone understands that. Do I have a proposer, please, for those recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Nigel. Are there any amendments? No. Anyone object? No, thank you. They're carried unanimously. So thank you for that. Mr. Mansfield, can I just say thank you for attending this evening and for your patience. Obviously, there's a big body of work to do here, and our role as an audit committee clearly is to make sure that the governance and assurance across the whole authority is adhered to. And unfortunately, the school report has given us some very serious concerns. But I understand that you're working extremely hard with the internal audit team and the local education authority. And let's hope that that can continue and we get out of this mire as soon as possible. And I should imagine with some good leadership from yourself, the governing body and the team, that we should get out of it. So on that basis, thank you for attending, and clearly put the September date in your diary, and we look forward to seeing you then. But thank you very much for your time.
Right, thank you. I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, if we go back to the report then, item 6, which is the Vale of Glamorgan application of sustainable development principles in service areas, corporate performance and resources committee, 24th of May. Tom. You've frozen. Tom, you're frozen.
Shall we come back to that item, Chair?
I didn't know whether Councillor Prothero wanted to take it. Okay, item 7. Oh, well, 7's the same, isn't it, for Tom as well? So
That's
should we
correct,
just
Chair, yeah.
should we do number 8 then? Oh, no, that's Tom as well, isn't it? Audit work programme. Sorry, Sarah, you'll have to wait a minute. Oh, sorry, Councillor Good, John.
Can I recommend then to the committee that we take item 10, since that's regarding next year's audit plan?
Yeah, thank you. So we're on to item 10 then, which is the internal audit strategy and risk-based plan 23-24. Andrew? Oh, Joan.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Hello, I'm Joan Davis, the Deputy Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. The purpose of this report is to provide members of the Governance and Audit Committee with the annual internal audit strategy and risk-based plan for 23-24. The proposed internal audit strategy is Appendix A. The strategy demonstrates in detail how the internal audit service will be delivered in accordance with our terms of reference. This includes the methodology used to develop the internal audit annual plan and the approach taken when undertaking audits. The strategy also includes the definition of internal audit as per the public sector internal audit standards, the responsibilities of the Section 151 officer, and information that's to be provided to this committee. The proposed annual risk-based plan for 23-24 is as Appendix B. The plan provides this committee with an overview of the work to be undertaken, which will offer sufficient coverage to be able to provide an opinion at the end of 23-24. The proposed annual plan is flexible to allow for changing circumstances and events that may occur, such as requests to respond to new issues that may emerge, as well as to undertake follow-up audits as we've discussed earlier on in this meeting. The Governance and Audit Committee will receive updates on how the plan is being delivered and any changes that may be required. Appendix B illustrates the audit areas to be reviewed, a proposed outline scope and the priority rating. Of the 68 items listed at Appendix B, I just wanted to highlight that the 16 items from number 53 onwards identifies the work that will be undertaken by internal audit, which will not necessarily provide an audit opinion, whilst the other items listed on the plan will provide an opinion on each piece of work. That's all I'd really like to say, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Joan. Questions? Nigel.
Hi, Joan. Thanks for going through that. I have to say I'm sorry, but I'm struggling with this one in terms of my view of it and whether I can approve it or not. This is for a few reasons. One of which, the main one, is you describe it as a risk-based plan. And when we discussed the plan last year, which was our first year as lay members, we asked that more linkage be made between the audits you're planning and the risks of the organisation. It's a risk-based plan, therefore we should see how the risks actually feed through into the audit plan. Now, the structure of the plan you've given us this year is exactly the same as last year. That change hasn't been made. In addition, I completely concur with Matthew's point earlier about the high priorities. It was raised then, and Andrew said earlier that it's a subjective assessment, that actually he made it seem like it wasn't exactly specifically there for prioritising which audits will occur and which ones not. So I'm now a little bit confused about what that priority means. I assumed, as in terms of this plan, that those were the ones that were high priority to be carried out during the year. And therefore, when that comes through to the annual report to say that 14 or 15 haven't been done, but non-high ones have, I therefore don't know which ones in this plan are actually high priority to be done or which ones aren't. So I'm struggling with those two issues as a starting point. The other thing we asked for last year a couple of times during the year was for timings to be added, even if it was just a quarter, to say that we think, the audit of mobile devices will be undertaken in Q2, for example. So again, we can actually track completion of the plan throughout the year. That's not in here. And then there's some actual queries I've got over specific review areas, but I'll hold those back for those bigger issues, which are about linking it to risks. What is the actual priority of the audits, and having some timings on here. But those are my key points. And I suppose my question is, why haven't they been changed in this? And is there anything else that we can have to give us assurance that this plan will be completed?
Thank you for that, Nigel.
Thank you. If I can start, and then I'm sure Andrew will want to add what I miss. I'll take the last one first, if you like. As far as the timings are concerned, we will add another column in as we go through the year with the timings. What we do, as soon as the plan is being approved, I will circulate it back to the directorates throughout the council. And when I do that, I ask them to tell me any specific times which would not be suitable for an audit, and any times where they would prefer us to audit. Now, we can't guarantee that we'd be able to accommodate all those, but that'll give us some idea to kind of line up our resources, and at that point then I'll be able to identify moving forward what quarters we intend to do most of the plan. Obviously, if we've got an approved work, then that will be reported back, as Andrew described earlier, to yourselves. So as we go along, that will develop. As far as the way that the plan has been presented to you, that's standard across all the 4 councils that we deal with. So as a regional service, we're consistent across all 4. So that's the information that's been given to all 4, and that's the way the plan has been presented to all 4. As far as priorities are concerned, yes. We do the plan to the number of days that each authority buys in from the regional service. So we have, as Andrew said, a long list of audits based on all the intelligence that we gathered, whether that's through questionnaires with directors, meetings with directors, past audits, new systems, new managers, a whole host of things, as well as the corporate risk register, service plans, etc. We get a long list. From that long list, then we have to kind of cut off depending on the number of days that we've got available and the resources. So most of them are high because they are the important ones. So you are right, high risk are the important ones, and there's some medium. However, ideally, we would like to do them all that are on that plan, because that equates to the number of days and the resources that we should have available in an ideal world. However, as we know, it's not an ideal world, and things will change as we go along. So the intention is that we would try our very best to do all the high priorities. Some of the medium priorities, as Andrew explained, are schools and key financial systems. And now they're probably classed as medium because the risks aren't so high. Maybe it's a system that's been in there forever. A school, their budget is a lot smaller than other areas of the council, so they're medium risk. However, they're as important in some respects, because, as Andrew said, you could have frauds in a school. So we need to kind of look at the wider remit as well as the kind of high risk areas, because we have to give each of the directors assurance across the board of each of their directorates. So I've kind of talked around in a circle, but equally we have to have audits in there that are more experienced auditors can do. So they can't all be high complex things. We need the routine audits, such as the school audits, financial systems, etc., to give assurance, as I said, and also for auditors to be able to learn and develop and do the less taxing, more straightforward establishment and systems audits, so they can progress. I don't know if Andrew wants to add anything onto that otherwise, and I'm not sure if I've answered all your questions. Sorry, Nigel.
Thanks, Joan. Yeah, just a couple of things for me. In terms of the methodology of arriving at this plan, that's set out in item 7 of the report, paragraph 7, in terms of what we do, in terms of our own risk assessment, in terms of getting individual jobs into that plan. It's not straightforward, but we try to get a balance between making an industry out of this and actually getting the work done. So in terms of identifying the key risks per individual jobs, then that would be a mammoth task to bring to Governance and Audit Committee. We do go through a process. We do talk to directors of service areas, heads of service. We do pick up issues that are known internal audit issues across the board. We do look at the corporate risk register, and we do assess whether there's a new system in place, or there's been a fraud perhaps, or a change in management. That all encompasses a risk assessment process. but we're trying to be objective as we possibly can. But that said, there's some things in the plan which we have to do on an annual basis. I think there are 3 grant claims which we have to do. The funding organisation has said that we need to undertake those because they need an internal audit certificate in order to release the funding. That wouldn't probably be a high risk in terms of our assessment, in terms of our input into the annual governance statement. And work on NFI, for example. It's some of the things we do, it's because we have to do them. So I'm trying to get a balance in terms of arriving at the plan without overburdening members, but without making an industry in that planning process. I've seen in other areas where you can do a very complex matrix and you score each particular audit you could potentially undertake. The audit universe is, for us, 800 plus, and then variations of that. And that, depending on the nature of it, could change as soon as the ink is dry, almost, in terms of the planning process within local government. And we know that because that's what's happened in years gone by. So we plan to what we know, what resources we have available. And as Joan said, it is set out based on the plan that was the number of days set out when the organisations came on board with the regional internal audit service. And we are carrying some vacancies. So there's a risk there that we're not going to complete it 100%. But in an ideal world, this is what we intend to complete.
I'll come back on that, Chair.
Yeah.
I understand that. I understand a risk-based internal audit planning process. I think what you're asking us to do here is just say you've done a process behind the scene and these are the ones you're supposed to do. So I think that's, if that's what we have to do, then that's the process. I think there's a little confusion over what the priority column is there for. You referred to it in a number of different ways then between you and Joan. It's a priority column, not a risk column. So therefore, actually, if a school review is a priority this year, but not a high risk, then that should be a high priority. And that's why it's in the plan. And that's why it's been profiled. I completely get that, totally understand that. Equally, having something, if you have to do the grant certification work, which is on line 5, well, that's not a high priority. That's just something you have to do. So can we not just have that information in there that says we have to do it? It's not a high priority. It's a certainty. You have to do it. I think that would just give some clarity over which ones are actually high, which ones really have to be done. And things like the mediums, like at the end of the year, 2 mediums on, for example, lines 25 and 26. If work is not going to be undertaken, I would expect those mediums to be the first to go, not the high priorities. It just doesn't line up in my head to say it's high priority, but it's not as high as the other mediums. I can't get that language use in my head. So I think there's a clarity point there. With regard to it's the same format that we do across all bodies, that sounded to me like it was a bit of it's the same format, so tough. I think if that's the case and that's the way this works, then I'll take that, and perhaps it's a conversation we can have outside. I wonder if that's the format we always have, whether there's some additional information perhaps we can get in the covering paper rather than in the format that sits behind it or something, just to give us that additional information. Perhaps something we can take offline, but I think with this one and the comments earlier with regard to the annual report, I have to say I've just struggled with really identifying, are these the reviews that will give us as the Governance and Audit Committee assurance throughout the year, especially the question over how much of it is actually going to be completed. But I'll say perhaps it's something to take offline, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that. Andrew,
Chair.
Rather than prolong this, clearly Nigel's raised some very pertinent points in regards to the process being followed here. Is it worth having a meeting offline fairly quickly? Because there may be some learning points for us all here moving forward. We're not saying this is perfect in any shape or form. And you will be aware that we're going to do a sort of an annual review of the work of the Governance and Audit Committee. And Tom is kindly resolving that for us and taking that forward. And this could be one of those issues. And I think it's the understanding of what members want. Well, actually, what they need, not what they want, what they need in regards to giving that assurance to this committee. And I think it would be better spent an hour off or 2 hours off this meeting discussing that, agreeing to disagree or agreeing whatever, and there could be some simple solutions rather than trying to prolong it here, because you're not going to answer all the questions. And my suggestion would be is that there be a meeting with interested parties outside this meeting within the next couple of weeks.
Chair, I'm happy to do that with Nigel Anna. There's I think we will probably agree to disagree on some areas. That's inevitable because audit is not an exact science. And you know, we're in danger of the audit committee members doing my job. And obviously we need to draw a line there in terms of what I'm responsible for professionally and the audit I give. And in terms of the assurance, at the end of the day, I don't think
it's calling into question your integrity or professionalism, Andrew. I think it's
glad to hear that.
No,
but at the end of the day,
everyone's got to learn lessons here, isn't it? And I think
absolutely.
And I think a discussion outside this meeting would be preferable in trying to explore it in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that okay? All right, Nigel. Nigel, is that okay? I suggest a meeting.
Yes, absolutely fine. Yeah, all good with me. I think that's a sensible idea. And I also don't want Andrew's job, just to make that very clear as well. So absolutely fine. I'm happy for him to carry on.
I didn't think you did. Sorry, Councillor, good job.
Yeah, just a couple of quicker points. I don't know if this comes into the point that you just made, Chair. Just wondering about the priorities and just making sure we have low priorities for a reason. And I understand that they all need prioritizing because they're all extremely important audits and we've fallen behind in the past, but there is a reason for low priority to exist. And if we aren't using low priority, then it kind of pulls into question why we have high, medium, low if they all end up being high eventually. But happy to have that discussion off if we want to do that. Also, just quickly on the follow-up report, I was just make the question of maybe we should have a list of follow-up audits that follow-up reviews that need to be made as part of the plan from last year, just so that we have them on the record as to what needs to be done. But again, if that's a conversation for outside this meeting, that's also fine.
Yeah, I think that's very relevant, really, for Andrew and Joan to consider, because they've got a plan set out here without the review ones they're going to undertake. And again, what you don't want is that to knock them off kilter for the year's audits they're doing now. So, they'll and we don't want them to do it, overpromise and underdeliver. So, I think they've got a hard enough job as it is with, their lack of staff as well. So I fully endorse what you say. And I think, as I said, it may be worthwhile having a meeting outside, with the team, just to have a discussion about it. There are learning points here for everyone, I think. So thank you for that, Councillor Goodjohn. Matthew.
Hello, Chair. Sorry, I don't mean to prolong everything here, so I'll make 2 quick points. And it would just be to say, I probably would agree with most of the things Nigel has said there. I certainly would not want this to escalate into a kind of us and them. It's not what I'm taking it. I think it's you guys have got a job to do. It's not certainly from my perspective. I'm not asking for more audit coverage. It's just trying to understand where the audit coverage is getting from and able to discharge my duty as a lay member of the committee to understand how that relates to the risk management aspect. Happy to take that offline. The only other point from a positive aspect I want to make is that I don't, just for clarity, I think we can record the points in the minutes, but I personally don't wish for that to come into any impact of taking this plan forward. I think we can take this plan forward, and happy to kind of be with it and have the discussions on the back end of that. So just to kind of put my view over from that. I will stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you, Matthew. Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone? Any comments from anyone? The only comments I make, Andrew, is the very pertinent points that we keep saying time and time. We got the high priorities, those which are being taken over from this year into next year, and the prioritisation of those, because what I don't understand is how many of those have gone over year after year after year after year, and they've not been dealt with. So there may be none, you know, but there may be some that are hanging, which are residual, which were picked up in 2019, 2020, and they should, you know, if they were high priority then they need to be given priority now to be dealt with. And I know we've had discussions in different places about, you know, sometimes there's the service managers not got enough staff, etc., etc. But at some stage, someone's got to draw a line and say enough's enough. We're going to do that audit in that thing. So I think that's just my concern in regards to those that if they've gone forward from last year into this year, then there should be some prioritization in regards to those. Unless they're not high priority, and therefore should they be dropped off or whatever. And I know we've discussed that before, Joan, haven't we?
Yeah, if I can just give you some information there, Chair. From the audits that were not started in 21-22 that were carried into the 22-23 plan, there were 10. 4 have been completed in 22-23, and 6 obviously therefore haven't, but 2 of those elements have been included in other audits. Yeah. For example, waste was picked up in the risk audit, and consultancy work has been undertaken on Oracle Fusion rather than a full audit because of the delay in implementation. The others of the ones now carried forward, we've already made a good start and we've completed one already, and others are in hand, and hopefully they will be undertaken. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Nigel, comments?
Yeah, thank you. That's really good news to hear that there's good progress on those, because that is a big concern. And just on that risk management one as well, it'd be great to see something on the holistic review of risk management. I think every review in there is about taking individual risks. So I don't know when the last time that was looked at in terms of the overall risk management process, but that would be a useful audit at some point to include in the plan as well. I don't know when that was last covered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. Andrew?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and take on board those points, and we'll provide further information when we provide our progress report into Governance and Audit Committee.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew, and thank you for your support. Obviously, you know, I think I hope you didn't see it in any criticism, but I think there's some learning exercise for us all moving forward and an explanation, because I think sometimes people come in from outside the organisation of local government, and some people in local government, you know, don't necessarily receive that very well. I think this is a learning exercise for us all, and I think as long as we all adopt that moving forward, that's a key message for us. So, and I know you're going to do that. So thank you, and Joan, for doing that. Okay, if there's no other comments, anyone? No, if we go to the recommendations, then the recommendation is to approve the proposed draft internal audit strategy and annual risk-based audit plan for 23-24 in compliance with the public sector internal audit standards and the committee's terms of reference. And obviously, if there are any movements on that, subject to the discussions outside this meeting, then I'm sure Andrew will bring it back and just update committee as to what's going to take place or what's going to happen or what change is going to be made. Is someone prepared to move that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Prothero. And a seconder, we've got Councillor Goodjohn. Thank you very much. Anyone against? No, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Should we just deal with item 10 then, which is the forward work programme? Seeing we're on your reports. Joan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Very quickly, agenda item 11 is the forward work programme. It's a report that all committee are familiar with. The table at 2.3 lists the items due to the next meeting on the 17th of July 2023, and Appendix A provides the detailed timetable. So I've got nothing else to add. Members of the committee are asked to endorse the schedule. Obviously, based on the conversations we've had earlier around Stanwell, that needs to be included on the forward work programme for September, but taking on board what we've discussed today, that those will be made, those adjustments will be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Any comments? the other item that needs to be added to the 17th of July is the interim update from your team in regard to the contractual process recommendation, whatever it was, of the previous report. So just an interim, unless you've done the full findings, so that members can be reassured where we're at. So if that can be added, Joe, that's great. Okay, thank you. You'll see the recommendation that we presumably note the proposed work programme. Someone prepared to move? Thank you, Matthew. Seconder, Councillor Goodjohn. Thank you very much. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you very much. If we go to item now 6.
My apologies for freezing earlier on you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear and see me now, though.
We can hear you, but you're very blurred, Tom.
Oh, let me turn my camera
on
off.
my machine anyway. I don't know whether you're blurred on anyone else's.
I'll carry on. As long as you can hear me, that's good. So, thank you for taking this reference. This is coming to you from the Corporate Performance and Resources Committee recently. It relates to a piece of local work that Audit Wales have undertaken. This was in follow-up to another local study that Audit Wales colleagues undertook in 2021-22, where they raised concerns regarding our approach to addressing one of the proposals for improvement in a review of the outsourced leisure services report, and that related to a specific aspect of the opportunity to strengthen the application of the sustainable development principle in the renewal of that leisure contract. And the sustainable development principle, as members will be aware, comes from the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. It requires us to demonstrate 5 ways of working in order to comply with that principle. So Audit Wales subsequently undertook a review in the latter half of 2022 to gain further assurance of the Council's strengthening arrangements for ensuring that service areas were applying that sustainable development principle. The piece of work that Audit Wales undertook concluded that the arrangements that the Council has for ensuring service areas that do apply the sustainable development principle are largely effective, although there was scope identified to further develop some elements. So the key findings of the report that the Scrutiny Committee considered were that our senior officers, supported by the corporate framework, are helping to drive a positive culture that supports services to apply that sustainable development principle, but that hasn't been fully incorporated into the Council's project management toolkit. The auditors went on to say that there is effective corporate support to help service areas to apply the sustainable development principle, but there's an opportunity for us to strengthen our learning and development offer, and that the Council has got mechanisms in place to help it assess whether service areas are effectively applying the sustainable development principle and is applying learning to strengthen its arrangements. So your committee this evening, Chair, have got the reference from Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, so you can see the debate that was had at that committee. We've referred it to your committee this evening and thereon to Cabinet for consideration, primarily to endorse the proposed management responses to those 2 recommendations. So the one regarding the project management toolkit, the second about strengthening the learning and development offer. Your committee will then receive 6 monthly updates as part of the regulatory report tracking mechanisms that we have in place. It will be considered on a quarterly basis by scrutiny committees and Cabinet, and oversight by the Strategic Insight Board as well. So that's just a quick overview of that particular reference, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tom. Are there any questions, members? Nigel?
Thanks, Chair. It was just in response to the one of the recommendations, the second recommendation R2. The recommendation was the Council should develop its learning and development offer to help ensure staff across the organisation understand, etc., etc. The organisational response was to undertake a programme of communications and information provision. I kind of read the recommendation as being more training, that sort of learning and development. I suppose maybe it's just a wording thing I've read slightly differently. I just wanted your assurance in terms of that recommendation. Do you think that adequately responds to that recommendation? You'll be able to get enough information through a program of communications and information provision to really get that embedded throughout the organisation and make sure people do understand it.
I think that's a really good point, Nigel, and I suppose it's written in the context that the Audit Wales colleagues found that the framework that we've got in place for ensuring that the 5 ways of working are demonstrated and the sustainable development principle is demonstrated is strong. So you see within committee reports it's embedded there. So the decision-making framework. So I think for me it was making sure that we're communicating back to colleagues the importance of understanding that. And that, I think, then combined with the review of the project management toolkit and the guidance that goes alongside that should help to drive that. I do think it's a good challenge, though, and something that perhaps we could look at augmenting the wording, because there are opportunities when we bring our colleagues together to do specific training. You know, we'll do that on the project management toolkit, where it would be a more active learning offer than it would just be communication. So, yeah, I think it's a good point that we can certainly take on board.
Thank you, Nigel. Any other questions? Any members? Tom, can I just ask a question? Obviously, the recommendations there and the organisational responses there in regards to each, and it's got quite a long completion date, which is nearly, well, 9 months off now. I assume there's an action plan under each of these organisational responses, which sets out who's doing what, what's being done, and by which date. Is it possible that the committee could see that at some stage? Because again, we need to monitor whether you're on time or off time, or, you know, that it's not all going to be done in sort of January 24.
Absolutely, and I can assure you it won't all be done in January 24 because of the other things that be demands on our time at that point of the calendar as well. But no, absolutely, and I wonder if the way for us to perhaps address that is making sure that the commentary that we provide in the updates to you and to all the committees describes that various activity that's underway. So the project management toolkit review, for example, is underway already as part of developing our new digital strategy. So lots of these things are being progressed. I'll make sure that members are kept fully apprised.
Okay, that's lovely, because obviously if we're going to have a 6 monthly report, a lot of work will have been done, but the following still.
Yeah,
so yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Tom, for that. Any other questions? Any comments, members? No, you see the recommendation. I think it's only recommendation 2 that affects us, really, that the report be referred, which it is, and we endorse. I think we need to endorse and have oversight of the proposed council's actions to address the recommendations, and obviously that will be brought back to us, I should imagine, 6 monthly, and then about the same time next year for it's all been dealt with. Can I have someone to move the recommendation, please? Thank you, Nigel. Seconder. Can I have a seconder? That's it. Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Anyone object? Nope. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Tom, the next one yours as well, the annual performance calendar.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Chair. So this has been referred to your committee by Cabinet. It's also been referred to all 5 of the Council scrutiny committees as well. And it's looking to do 3 things, I guess. So we're seeking your views to refer back to Cabinet this evening, and the purpose of the report is to provide an overview for elected members on the performance related activities that the council will be undertaking over a 12-month period. This is the second year that we've developed this report. I thought it was a useful report last year because we had a new cohort of elected members, but also there had been quite significant changes introduced by Part 6 of the Local Government and Elections Act in terms of how corporate performance is managed. And I know your committee is very aware of the new duties that that Act places upon this particular committee. So the report provides an update on 3 main areas of the Council's work in compliance with those provisions. The first is around the annual self-assessment process. So The report provides some reflections that have been undertaken on the first annual self-assessment process. We've reflected on the feedback from elected members, including through this committee, but also from Welsh Government, the WRGA. We also commissioned internal audit colleagues to look at the process in terms of compliance, both with the letter and the spirit of the Act, and they provided a substantial assurance opinion on the arrangements that the Council had put in place. This year's process, which has kicked off in the last few weeks, will now build on that. It'll look to build in some additional rigour into the process. So we're looking at how we can make sure that risk influences the judgments that each director and their teams give them themselves in terms of the key areas of activity, strengthen some of the preparatory work for the director peer challenge sessions, as well as making some changes in response to feedback to simplify the overall report itself. And in terms of the next steps for that, engagement will take place over the summer, with an initial draft being pulled together in September. It'll be brought to your committee on 2 occasions then prior to full council. The report then goes on to talk about panel performance assessments. As committee will be aware, this is a new provision of the Local Government and Elections Act, which requires the Council to commission an external panel to assess performance once in each electoral term. The WLGA, for members' information, have recently consulted on potential arrangements for that organisation supporting councils to, in effect, manage the process on their behalf, and we're expecting some further information from WLGA colleagues shortly. The report to Cabinet recommended that the panel peer assessment be undertaken in early 2024. It is a political decision as to when that panel assessment is undertaken. The recommendation that Cabinet considered in terms of the timing of the assessment is due to the Council needing to publish a new corporate plan from April of 2025, and it would seem good timing to use the evidence base that panel assessment would provide as part of the evidence base for producing the Council's next 5-year strategy. So that's just an update in terms of the timing. And then finally, in terms of the third section of the report, that's about that annual performance calendar, which is an Appendix A to the report for members. Again, it's the second time this has been produced, and its intention is to show how all of the various aspects of the performance regime fit together. So the quarterly performance reporting, self-assessment, risk management, the development and delivery of the annual delivery plan, as well as service plans and target setting processes. Last year, we introduced some informal, if you like, sessions with elected members on key aspects of the performance work. So we discussed the presentation of information, the structure of the self-assessment, how we should be presenting service plans to enable effective scrutiny. And feedback from elected members, as well as council colleagues, has been that those sessions proved really useful, both in increasing the knowledge of elected members in terms of some of the performance mechanics, but certainly for my colleagues in terms of understanding the perspectives that the members are looking at these reports through, and therefore helping us to shape reports that are better quality for yourselves. And I know in the previous item where we've been talking about risk management, we can certainly factor in some sessions with Governance and Audit Committee along a similar line to look at the corporate risk framework, and also to look at things like the regular reporting to yourselves of the work programme of internal audit. That would feel consistent with what we're trying to achieve here. I meant to say to Nigel earlier, in terms of the internal audit of the overall risk environment and the corporate risk approach, that was last undertaken a couple of years ago. I'm currently recruiting to the senior post within the performance team who has responsibility for risk, and one of the first things that new person will be looking to do is take forward some of that work. But in the interim, we can certainly have some of those further discussions in terms of what as a committee you're looking for. So that's an overview of the performance calendar reference. Chair, obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tom, for that. Questions now, Councillor Hooper.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tom. I'm just on the Council's 2.1.3 in the timetable, you referenced the public engagement with the public. Just interested in how you think that could differ from last year and how we really use the public as a good sounding board. That's the first question. The second point in the annual performance calendar, you referenced the workshops with members. And I'm just interested how we can improve on those, because I attended the members workshop last time, and I'm not sure that we really utilised the time effectively enough because it was an environment like this. And I'm just wondering whether we should try and make sure that we have some in-person workshops as well as ones that may be on Teams, because I think you get more value out of that. And the last point, Tom, and forgive me, I may have got this wrong, but last year on the self-assessment, I'm sure we pulled out the unions as a separate, specific body that we spoke to. And I think just to put them in as being, if they are, as a group that's just been part of our people who we just talked to, I think is a mistake. I think they need to be referenced directly. If I've missed it, I'm sorry, but I was looking for it in August time 2023 on the calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Tom?
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. I'll take them in reverse order then, if that's okay. I absolutely, the trade unions are really important, and they're named in the legislations requiring us to engage with them on the self-assessment. I think the relationship that we have with our trade unions in the Vale is a really positive and constructive one, so we would do that anyway. But I can certainly make sure, I think it perhaps would be useful, we could add that into the named list within that August engagement activity. In terms of the improvements to the workshop, I'm absolutely always in the hands of elected members. I'm very keen to get as much feedback and involvement in this work as possible, and feedback on the mechanism by which we can do that is something that I'm really happy to look at. So I know some elected members find Teams very accessible and much easier than commuting, and it therefore is more accessible to participate. Others prefer in-person events, and perhaps what we need to do is make sure that we offer a blend of those as well. So no problem to look at doing that. And then the first question you asked in terms of how do we improve our ability to use the public as a sounding board and to engage with them. I suppose two things. One is making sure that we reflect more comprehensively within the self-assessment that there is an ongoing dialogue with the public, that it's not Tom rocks up in August and asks, what do you think of this corporate document? What goes into that corporate document should reflect the conversations through engagement, involvement and consultation that have been underway across the organisation across that 12-month period. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to do that more effectively this year, to look at how that influences the self-assessment. But we are conscious as well of making sure that we do have a robust set of engagement data for the organisation, and I'm working with colleagues currently to look at how could we possibly do a larger scale engagement exercise in a similar timeline to both influence the annual self-assessment, but importantly the annual delivery plan for the next year, to also feed into things like our budget setting process as well. So there are some formative ideas around that, which I'm looking to put some momentum behind in the coming weeks.
Can I just follow up?
Yep.
With you, I think the point about the public, last time people did engage, it'd be useful to talk to them perhaps and find out whether they felt that their contributions were heard by the council. Because I think you'll find that because it was a small group, if I remember, I can't remember the amounts, but it was very small. So we should be able to identify them and see whether or not they felt they were heard. It doesn't necessarily mean that their opinions were taken forward. I accept that, but they do need to make sure that they felt heard, because these are people who are engaged in the process, and we need to be welcoming them in, even if they have views sometimes that we may not agree with.
Thank you. Tom, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions from anyone? Any comments? The only comment I've got, Tom, is just picking up from what Councillor Hooper's just said, is the engagement with staff, public and other key stakeholders. And it takes place during August. Now, August ain't a good time to do any engagement or consultation because lots of people are on holiday, etc., etc. And if schools were your key stakeholder, then obviously there's no one there in the schools from middle of July to the end of August. So I think there just needs to be some thought given to whether that should be extended after August into September. I know it affects your timescale and your timetable, or in July going into August, because what you don't want is missing the voice of some who would like to have contributed, but they're on holiday. And I think the other thing is, you mentioned about the engagement, a rolling programme of engagement for the 12-month period, you know, when picking up what people say there. It would be interesting to know where that data comes from. So, you know, what sessions are held, where, and who are they with, and what are they addressing? Because clearly, you know, your team's got a big job to do anyway, bringing all this evidence together and all this data together. But, you know, to keep people engaged, it's the Councillor Hooper part. You know, if people are willing to get engaged and to put comments in, whether you like them or not, they're prepared. Someone actually needs to give them an answer and say, yeah, we're going to address that, or we're not going to do it, because at least then the feedback goes back to them and think, oh, actually, they took that into consideration. And I think that's very important. And the public consultation, it's in the annual self-assessment. I think it's in September for the annual performance review. And again, what's the time scale? Is it a week? Is it 4 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? Or is it done in one place, or is it done across the county borough? Or, it's just that process, I think, to ensure, apart from ticking the box to say we've done it, actually you get some really good input into this.
Absolutely, and I think the ability to get the maximum input into our self-assessment does come from that rolling 12-month period, and I think the comments that you made, Chair, around the importance of showing that data within the self-assessment, describing what the findings were, what were we consulting or engaging on, and importantly, what happened as a result of it. That's the really important piece. It is a tight timescale to turn around an assessment of this nature. So doing that 6 to 8 week consultation over the summer is not ideal. But as I say, that should be a consultation on the conclusions that we're drawing rather than on the information that's feeding into it. But certainly we will undertake to have a look at the timescales to see what flexibility there is to extend those, certainly. But people will also have a really good opportunity as part of the annual delivery plan consultation that will run in the winter to influence our priorities as well going forward. And that's obviously a natural next step from the self-assessment report itself.
Thank you for that, Tom. If there are no other questions, any comments? No comments? The recommendations then, I think, are that we note the Vale of Morgan annual performance calendar 23-24 and the proposed approach to engaging with members in the year to shape the annual performance calendar of activities and support members. And basically the comments that have been made by the Councillor Hooper and the other contributors, Tom, to be put into the recommendation and they be referred back to Cabinet. Yeah. Okay. Someone prepared to move, please? Councillor Hooper, thank you. Can I have a second? Nigel, thank you. Anyone against? No, thank you. That's carried. And then we're on to item 8. The Audit Wales Work Programme Timetable 22-23. Sarah and Tom, you've been waiting there for ages.
I have, yes. I don't know, Tom, if you wanted to go first or whether you're happy for me to just carry on. So I appreciate there's a covering report with it.
Happy for you to carry on, Sarah.
Okay, well, I'll assume members have kind of had the opportunity to look at the updated work programme, and perhaps I'll just take the opportunity to highlight a couple of changes, if that's okay, Chair. So it mentions there on page 2 about audit of grant claims, and it specifically mentions the exception of the housing benefit subsidy claim, and that we hope that will be done by May. Just to say that that work is still ongoing, but we hope that will be finished as soon as possible. In terms of the audit of the council's 22-23 statement of accounts, I think we're anticipating the draft accounts over the next couple of weeks, and my financial audit colleagues will be in contact with the council's finance team to firm up the timescales for the audit. Then some of the other sort of updates, really, some of the work that is ongoing. So be aware of that we're going to be doing a piece of work around capital programme management. Just to add that that's the thematic piece of work that we're going to be doing at all 22 councils. Similarly, the use of performance information, which is quite a narrow focus around service user and outcomes. Again, that's a piece of work we're doing at all 22 councils. The thematic review of unscheduled care, just to give an update, because it does talk about reporting April onwards, to explain that the reporting, there has been some delays in terms of our ability to do the field work. So we're looking now at draft reports being issued towards the end of July. So I just wanted to update the committee on that. And work is on hand, obviously, for the digital work, which again is a piece of work that we're doing at all 22 councils. The bespoke local project we've just touched on in terms of sustainable development. And then the report includes updates on various other kind of local government studies, that piece of work that we've published and are ongoing. I just wanted to update on the corporate joint committees, because since we did this update, we've met with representatives of the 4 corporate joint committees, and we are now going to issue separate letters to each of the 4 corporate joint committees, as well as the summary report. So just wanted to let you know about that. And I think that's probably most of it, but I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for that. It's very kind. Any questions from any members? No? Oh, Councillor Good, John.
Just quickly, I was wondering, following the report from the UK Committee on Climate Change, if Audit Wales is going to be partaking on any work in future soon regarding local government and its place in decarbonisation.
Are you happy for me to respond, Chair?
Yes, carry on, Sarah.
So it is, I think, if you've seen our consultation paper that we issued previously, it is one of our key priorities around climate change. So we have done some initial work, and I would expect us that we will probably be doing more at some point. I don't know the exact details of that, but the Auditor General has signalled that, you know, that is one of our priority areas. I'll come back to you with more information once I know more. But yeah, thanks.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Any members? Oh, Nigel?
Sorry, Chair. It's actually a comment. I meant to come in on the comment section. Apologies, but just to say that actually I found the report really useful in terms of understanding what was going on, and the inclusion of the publication dates with the links I just found really useful. So just thank you for a very interesting report. Thanks.
Thank you, Nigel. You're taking advantage of me there, but there we are. Any other comments? No, there are no other comments. So to the recommendations then, that number 1 is that we note the contents of the report, and number 2, that the report be referred to Cabinet for their oversight. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Goodjohn, thank you very much. Anyone against? No, no one against? Lovely, thank you very much, that's carried. I think number 12 now we're at. Any other items which Chair has decided are urgent? There are none. Part 2 reports, there are none. Before I close the meeting, can I just thank everyone for their time this evening? I think, again, some excellent discussion and the debate on the matters that have come before us. I think there's certainly a lot of learning that we can take from it. But I'd just like to thank the officers as well for, staying the distance, producing some excellent reports for us to consider. And obviously, as we move forward, there is only one way. Hopefully we can go is up and continuously improving. So thank everyone for their time and effort. Thank you, Sarah Jane, for sticking the distance. And see you in 17th of July. Thank you very much.